The old running out of storage issue. Let's see. So back at this, I was close to just finishing up this initial kind of sketch block in, and I was working on the back candle. And as I look at my image, I can see that there's a couple things going on that I see pretty quickly. This one is too wide, and these others need to be a little bit wider if they're going to be similar to the reference photograph. So I can spend time adjusting that. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I will shave off this front one, just thin that down a little. Go to the gym. Do some aerobics, whatever. Clean up things in general. I don't know if that's that simple. I think it's going to need a little bit more serious adjusting. All sorts of good, potential measuring issues going on with anything you draw, and this is no exception. But some things I would want to take time if I was really, wanting to take this to a complete drawing, is I would want to make sure I sort of understood how all these widths were related to each other. It seems sort of clear that they're probably the same width, but then as you measure them, this one is clearly the widest and this is clearly the most narrow. These seem fairly close, which maybe that's all making sense. Maybe in reality they are, but this is appearing, but because it's further away and things are closer, and these two are about the same distance. Just finish up with this one, and has gotten sort of too wide. Just in general, I want to make sure I get this, the top really super duper skinny ellipse, almost not even there. I will say those can be tricky to draw, and the important thing also is to remember that if for whatever reason you're looking at something or a reference photograph, you're wanting to draw is at exactly the eye level where you can't see any of the top, I would take artistic license and either shift it a little bit higher so that then the that's not even in. So it's a little higher, and then, well, the subsequent ellipse would change accordingly, or just imagine it's a tiny bit lower, so we can at least make out that indeed is an ellipse. Because if you just have, especially a shape like this, if that was just rectangular, the only thing that would be telling me that it's a cylinder would be its shading, which would certainly be significant. But a little more cleanup, a little more knockback. And that is how I would sketch in an initial layout for something like this. I'm not going to go deep into the shading and stuff. I have other fun videos on that, but it's time to move on to other fun videos of other exciting perspective drawing subjects. I do want to say maybe one last thing. I always say that, and then I say at least one thing. The top ellipses and the placement of the wick is another great opportunity to understand or not understand how these things work. So if you go back and look at some of my other videos in this series, even talking about how when you're drawing an ellipse to get the actual shape, it helps greatly to know the major axis and the minor axis, and that those are all equidistant from each other. But because this is an ellipse and the circle in perspective, the actual perspective middle is a little bit further away than the center of the ellipse shape. So that can get confusing, but I would want to make sure when I placed the wick for each of these that I try to take that into consideration. By the time these are getting really thin, it's trickier to sort of identify the difference between that point and that point. But once again, this sort of subtle cues and important ones. This one especially. I'm not looking at the photograph, but I just want to make sure the placement of something like that makes sense to you. That might be a little excessive. It might not be sort of that far back. But if that's the middle of the minor axis, I want to make sure wick comes out slightly higher. So there is that. Check it out. Call her with questions, as I like to say. And practice a lot of ellipses. Good grief. Takes a lot. Okay.